The NFL this year has been a very unique season, something we will remember for a really long time, as all of y'all already know that everything was affected by COVID. There were no fans in the stands, and due to that, there were no preseason, and without a preseason, players were easily getting injured left and right. Not only that, players were opting out of the NFL. This regular season, we saw the AFC be the strongest it's ever been. As soon as the regular season ended, there were 9 teams that finished the regular season winning 10 plus games, which is absolutely absurd. The Miami Dolphins were one of the AFC teams that won 10 or more games in the regular season and didn't make the playoffs because they were playing a tough AFC conference. This regular season also saw the NFC as the weaker conference in this season, including when we're talking about the NFC East, as this division was one of, if not the worst division in football, as the Washington football team made it to the postseason with a below 500 record. As the 2020 regular season has ended and right now in the middle of the postseason, I decided to do 2 separate videos where in this video we're going to discuss the 5 teams in the NFL that were the biggest disappointments of the 2020 regular season, and in later videos we will discuss the flip side as we will talk about the biggest surprising teams of this season. In order to qualify to be in this list, the team has to be a team that we expected them to be a playoff team or become a Super Bowl contender in the season, or at least meet the expectations they should accomplish, but didn't meet expectations and did the complete opposite: disappoint. The ranking is based on the talent they have, and despite the talent in the roster they have, they will still find ways to lose games and be disappointing. And there were a team that won 10 plus games and plummeted down to the bottom of the standing due to the majority of players on a squad getting injured, and or a team that were supposed to meet expectations to make it to the playoffs but they didn't due to so many injuries, and that is the San Francisco 49ers, where a majority of the entire starting lineup of offense and defense got injured and on injury reserve. So based on that, I'm not putting a team like San Francisco on this list because everyone battled injury throughout the season. The teams in this list are the teams with starters who played enough games, majority of the games, or played the whole season and just not met expectations and disappointed throughout this season. And in today's video, we are going to rank the top 5 disappointing NFL teams of the 2020 season. Hey man, this is the A-Man Show, back at it again for more NBA and NFL content. Before the video starts, make sure y'all subscribe to my channel, as the majority of y'all viewing the channel are not subscribed to my channel, and I will appreciate it greatly if y'all support me by subscribing to my channel. It will help my channel grow, and also my article posts are in the description below, so y'all go check it out. Anyways, stay tuned.
I paid my dues, now I'm a made man. I call my fame, now I'm a made man. You never see me again. I got the juice, now I'm a made man.
Number 5, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos were viewed as one of the brightest young teams in the NFL, as in the stacked 2020 draft, the Broncos drafted 2 highly touted wideouts in the first round in Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. Them boys are supposed to be these players that will make an impact right away for this team, and most importantly help Drew Lock flourish in the offense, as we all expected Lock to blossom and become that quarterback that we envision him to be, a franchise-level quarterback, along with getting Melvin Gordon in free agency, who back then with the Chargers, he was a 1,000-yard rusher once and is an all-purpose back, a guy who can be a part of a passing offense due to his ability to catch passes. Also pairing up with Philip Lindsay, who's a speedy running back that once he's out of the hole, he's pretty hard to stop on the open field, and also has been one of the better running backs in the league. As an undrafted rookie, he was a 1,000-yard rusher through his rookie and sophomore year in the NFL. Also include Courtland Sutton, who is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL, as he had his best season of his career last year, as he caught 1,000 plus receptions and had 1,000 plus receiving yards. And also Noah Fant, who's emerging in the tight end department. And not mentioning their defense coming in this season were looked upon as one of the best in the NFL, as they have a talented defensive front in Bradley Chubb, who's emerging as a top pass rusher in the league, with Von Miller, who's aging a bit but still has something in the tank, and adding guys like Selby Harris, Malik Reed, and also not mention Justin Simmons, who's arguably the best safety in football and a good good coach in Vic Fangio, this team as a whole is stacked as hell and has the talent to compete with anyone in the league, including the Chiefs. They should have at least been a playoff team at worst, but that wasn't the case as many of the starters will battle injuries, especially for Von Miller as he suffered a ruptured Achilles while working out and on injury reserve. So is Cortland Sutton and later Shelby Harris and many others. And also Drew Lock, who did battle some minor injury during the season, but once he came back, he was not good at all. In fact, he was buns in this season. He only had 2 games where he threw for 300 plus yards and has been very inconsistent throughout the season. Led the league in picks, and not only that, the offense hasn't been great either. As Jerry Jeudy showed some promise and gave them production, but he has one of the worst hands in football, while on the other hand, Hamler hasn't been giving you meaningful production, and the O-line were not bad, but not good. And on the defensive side of the ball, they were ranked 21st in yards allowed, 29th in turnovers, and 25th in fumbles. The Broncos never won a game against a playoff team. Although they beat the Dolphins, who had a 10-6 record, they didn't make the playoffs, so that doesn't count. But still, despite the Broncos losing Miller and Sutton to injury and also Harris, they had enough pieces for them to compete and make it at least a wild card spot in the division, but they were bottom in the AFC West despite enough pieces to be at least not a slouch. But still, they are a young team and have some room to grow, as talent wise they are not far off from contending in the AFC. Hopefully everyone can be healthy enough to turn it around. The one thing I have concern about is Drew Lock, because right now he has 2 more years left of his rookie contract, and if he really can be that franchise quarterback for Denver and get max dollars, he needs to step up his game, because right now it's not looking good for him. So far, despite season-ending injuries from some of the key starters on the team, majority of the starters were healthy and they just haven't lived up to expectations, let alone disappoint, which is why they deserve to be ranked number 5 on this list. Number 4, the Minnesota Vikings. What to say about the Vikings, man? The Vikings in the games I saw, they just did not put that much heart in the regular season, as in the first few games, they started very slow and went 1-5 in 6 games, and after that, I knew they ain't making the playoffs. Minding the season prior, the Vikings were one of the best all-around teams in the league, as offensively they have a very good offense as Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, and Stephon Diggs leading the way in the offense, and on the other side of the ball, the Vikings are really known for their stellar defense, as they have 5 players on the team that will be Pro Bowlers, including Eric Kendricks, as he will be named first team All-Pro. I mean, that team last year, they were low-key a great team, as they knocked off the Saints in the wildcard round and went 10-6 in the regular season in 2019. Although Diggs was traded away to the Bills for a first-round pick of last year's draft, and that pick will later be Justin Jefferson, who will actually put up more production than Diggs when he was in Minnesota, it doesn't really impact the team all that much, as Minnesota will go 7-9, as Kirk Cousins will throw more yards and touchdowns than the season prior, but they're empty stats, and plus he will throw more interceptions and get sacked 39 times. And that is Cousins. He's just an above average quarterback in the NFL. He's not a guy that can take you to the promised land, and shout out to Dalvin Cook. He had an amazing season so far this year. He's the one that is actually making this team somewhat competitive. Now let's look at the defense. First, the Vikings cut Rhodes last year, and that was a regrettable mistake, as Rhodes will be a very reliable contributor to an elite Colts defense, but that didn't matter that much, as the Vikings ranked 7th in interceptions, but the defense has absolutely struggled on pass rush, and that's the reason why they traded for Yannick Ngakoue early in the season. For this team, the Vikings' future is pretty uncertain, as they do have a bright spot in Jefferson, and shout out to him for breaking this Randy Moss record. But anyways, this team's salary cap is pretty low, and they can't really sign any big name free agent this offseason. And although they have one of the youngest teams in the NFL, I believe the Vikings need to focus on developing their young players and trading away some of their pieces. The area the Vikings need to focus on is their pass rush, as they are very bad on pass rush. And for the 14th overall pick they have in this coming draft, they should get a pass rusher so that the defense can go back to somewhat it was back in 2019. For Kirk Cousins, he has 2 more years of his contract, and he did put up great stats in 2020. Hopefully he can continue being a solid game manager, but the Vikings, very disappointing season with a worse record than in 2019, even though they have mostly the same roster and without that much injury, but the majority of the starters on the Vikings roster gone worse. They only won 2 games against playoff teams, and yeah, they deserve to be ranked number 4 on this list. Number 3, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers heading into the season were ranked as far as the number 2 ranked defense coming into this season. Let me say that again. The Chargers heading into the season were ranked as the number 2 ranked defense heading into the 2020 season. And they made key acquisitions on the defensive side as they acquired Chris Harris Jr. And for a long time, he has been one of the better cornerbacks in the last decade. And last year, he looked like he still had something left on the tank, pairing up with Desmond King, Casey Hayward, and Derwin James, along with a veteran pass rusher in Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, which I believe he's going to make strides on becoming one of the elite pass rushers in the game. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who are one of the most dynamic wideout duos in the league, along with another receiving option in Austin Eckler and Hunter Henry. This team as a whole should have made it to at least a damn wild card. Not even that, make it to the divisional round, let alone compete with any playoff team in the AFC, regarding how tough this conference has been. At least, like I said before, the Chargers were ranked as the second best defense in the NFL from the beginning. Well, guess what? They didn't even live up to their rankings. At defense, will rank 22nd in points allowed, 17th in rushing yards allowed, and 23rd in turnovers. Although Derwin James had a season-ending knee injury, but at least the defense got to be top 10 or top 15 at the minimum. They came short of cracking at the 20th best defense. Chris Harris is a shell of himself. Casey Harris' production is not enough, and Joey Bosa has disappointed me this year. He has regrets in every statistical category, and despite him making a Pro Bowl, that doesn't negate him from him not putting that much production that I expected him to make. And the worst of all is their head coach, Anthony Lynn. He has been awful at coaching this team, making terrible play calls, tensions with his players. I'm glad that this man is gone for good, and they're still looking for a head coach for Herbert. And by the way, the reason why the Chargers are not ranked last in the AFC West, the same division with the Chiefs, is because of Justin Herbert's superb play. If it wasn't for him, they would easily be a bottom 5 team in the AFC and higher up in my list. But anyways, guys, the Chargers has been disappointing and didn't even come close to expectations. They have subpar defense this year, and that's them supposed to be a top 3 defense coming into this season. Thus, the number 3 spot on my list is the place they belong. Number 2, the Las Vegas Raiders. It has been 4 seasons since the Raiders made it to the playoffs and then lost to the Texans, and between 2017 and to now, they never won more than 9 games. Since Gruden came in 2018 and then Antonio Brown came to the Raiders to pair up with Amari Cooper, Derek Carr, and Jared Cook, we thought that the Raiders are making efforts to change this team around and become a respectable team in the AFC. But y'all know the story. The Antonio Brown fiasco, Derek Carr having one of his worst seasons of his career, Amari Cooper later get traded, and so did Jared Cook. I mean, the disaster of a season for the Raiders in 2018 and then 2019, they did pick up their play, all because Josh Jacobs, which they picked up in the second round of the 2019 draft, but they still didn't make the playoffs. This year, as the Las Vegas Raiders, they had an okay start, going 2-2 in the first 4 games of the season, and then the game against Kansas City, where the Raiders were the only team that the Chiefs lost to. And in the beginning of the season, we looked at the Kansas City Chiefs going undefeated with all of the additions they made, and Las Vegas beat them 40-32. After I saw this, I looked at the Raiders' eyes. I was like, damn, they are going to be a dangerous team in the AFC. They really got everything together. Thank God. Boy, I was wrong. The Raiders in the last 6 games of the regular season go 2-4. Raiders barely winning against the anus Jets, getting their behind kicked by the sorry Falcons, and the game against Miami where the secondary completely collapsed and Ryan Fitzpatrick made a miracle play. Thus, the Raiders were eliminated for the 4th consecutive time in 4 years. For Derek Carr, I'm going to say this. He's just not a quarterback that can win you any games. There'll be times where he'll play horrible in key moments, let alone have subpar seasons. If you look at his stats are up and down, and even though he did become more accurate in his passes, he's just not that talented nor good enough to win you games. And in the last 4 games of this season, the stats back up my statement. He is an average to a below average quarterback in the NFL, and the Raiders signed Carr to a 5-year $125 million contract. And the season and the next, he will have his worst seasons of his career and led the Raiders to nowhere. Josh Jacobs did slightly regress this year, but he scored more touchdowns, but also he averaged 3.9 yards per carry. That is not good, but still, he is an above average back in the game. And also their first round pick in 2020, at which they selected Henry Ruggs III, who has been unreliable throughout this season. As for the best player on the team in Darren Waller, Waller has been the second best tight end in the game behind Travis Kelce. The man can do anything. He can block, he can obviously can catch, and has speed. Waller has been top 3 in receptions and top 10 in receiving yards and has 9 touchdowns. He's the best player on this team, and he is the reason why they almost made it to the playoffs, let alone been competitive. As for the defense, man, the defense has been the second worst defense in the NFL, as they were bottom 3 in points allowed and in turnovers. They have a horrible secondary, subpar pass rush. This defense was just anus. So anus the fact that Gruden fired their DC in the last 4 games of the regular season. So yeah, the Raiders have an inconsistent offense and a terrible defense in the last 6 games of the regular season. The fact that they were 6-3, a winning record, and then plummeted. This Raiders, you'll never know how good they will be because they're one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL in general, and plus their low salary cap, at which they have $17 million in dead cap and can't really sign big key players. So for the Raiders in the drafting area, they need to draft a secondary that can greatly improve the struggling secondary, let alone draft any defensive players that can make a difference for this team. And for the offensive side, they have one of the best offensive lines in football and a great receiving core. Derek Carr is just holding the offense back, and the contract that the Raiders signed him in are stuck with him until 2023. So yeah, we thought that the Raiders are officially a playoff team, as they went 6-3 in the first 9 games of the season and then go in a 3-game losing streak in the last 4 games of the season. It's just unacceptable how this team finished the regular season, given the fact that they play against 3 playoff teams in the last 6 games and play poorly, especially Carr. Yeah, they deserve to be the second most disappointing team of the 2020 regular season. Number 1, the Dallas Cowboys. How about them damn Cowboys? Oh man, goddamn. To say that the Cowboys are number 1 in my list is not a surprise. The way they started this year, especially how the defense played, I knew the season was over in the get-go. Because before the season started, the Dallas Cowboys were absolutely one of the more anticipated teams to look forward to before the 2020 season started, because despite losing Travis Frederick to retirement, you still got Tyron Smith and Zach Martin on the roster and a borderline elite receiver duo in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and both of these guys were 1,000-yard receivers, and adding another receiver who is the best player in the stacked receiver class in 2020 in CD Lamb, also not forgetting Dak and Zeke. And for the defensive side of the ball, the Cowboys signed Everson Griffin, a guy who is a Pro Bowl edge rusher for the Vikings, and pairing up with DeMarcus Lawrence, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, while adding new head coach in Mike McCartney, who won a Super Bowl with the Packers. This team should win the NFC East easily in this trash division. But that's never even the case, as they will finish the regular season 3rd in the division. The whole entire team underperformed massively and didn't live up to expectations as usual. I mean, it's the Dallas Cowboys, for Christ's sake. Defense, I never think this defense will be this trash. I mean, on paper, they actually have a solid defense despite Byron Jones departing in free agency. As I watch this team, especially the defense, and in reports, they're not only the worst defense in the NFL, but one of the worst defenses in NFL history, especially in Cowboys franchise history. The offense has been lackluster despite Dak playing well. Ezekiel Elliott, that guy has regressed so much. I mean, if we even look back in his rookie season, He was undoubtedly the best running back in the game in just his rookie year, and then in later seasons he has been up and down. Despite all that, the Cowboys signed Elliott to a 6-year deal worth $90 million last year. My goodness. That has been a terrible signing. Despite Elliott having a superb season in 2019, rushing 1,000 plus yards and 12 touchdowns, this year he has regressed significantly. The last 5 games of this year, Elliott only scored 1 touchdown in that stretch. 1. That is abysmal. The fact that they paid Zeke an amount near $100 million, even though running backs are usually the least viable on an NFL offense, I mean, what were they thinking giving that dude that much money? And then also Dak's injury. Look, for Dak coming back next year, it's highly unlikely that he's going to get that max dollars that he desperately wanted due to that injury, but still, he's going to remain in the roster and hopefully his injury won't affect his play. Personally, I don't think that he's going to become that playoff quarterback for this team. As for the defense, they just need to get it together and restructure this awful defense. It is unacceptable how awful this defense has played throughout this season. Offensive line has been trash also. I mean, this team going into this season compared to all of the teams in their division and going against, the Cowboys are the easy picks to win the division, and everything as usual went wrong. And the way they finished the regular season, losing to the Giants and missed that chance to win the division, not only the Cowboys are the most disappointing team of the 2020 regular season, but they're one of the most disappointing teams in the last decade. And that's the video. Make sure y'all subscribe to my channel. My goal is to hit 100 subscribers by the end of March, and also give a like if y'all really like this video. All things to support my channel, and also turn on the notifications so y'all don't miss a beat. And also go check out my article post on the amino. These links are in the description below. And as always guys, this is the A-Man Show, signing out.